Each spring, cattlemen and women from around the country gather in Washington, D.C. for the annual NCBA Legislative Conference. For policymakers, it's a clear demonstration of how those in the American beef cattle industry can unify to deliver a message about the issues and regulations that can make or break their livelihood. Cattleman to Cattleman reporter Brian Baxter has more on the happenings at the 2014 Spring Legislative Conference.
It is hugely important to have our ranchers come to Washington, D.C. this week. It is an opportunity for the hats and boots to be on Capitol Hill and let our congresswomen and congressmen and senators know the important issues of the day facing the ranching business.
Being able to see all the cowboy hats, all the boots, we are definitely a presence that is well recognized on Capitol Hill.
There were plenty of hats on Capitol Hill as more than 200 cattlemen and women traveled to Washington, D.C. to discuss policy issues and to make sure their voices were heard by the decision makers in our nation's capital.
The Legislative Conference is a great opportunity to get our producers in town to make sure that they are engaged in the public policy process. Those of us who work every day in Washington, D.C., we go up on Capitol Hill, we work with the members of Congress and their staff, but every time we go in to talk about an issue, we always get the question, where are my producers back home? Well, this gives the great opportunity for producers to actually come into town and deliver that message face to face.
It really is important to come to Washington, D.C. when we have this opportunity at our spring legislative conference. We have a fabulous lobbying staff back here in D.C., a full-time lobbying staff here every day representing our interests, but this gives an opportunity for them to have the producers who establish their policy come back, and for the people here in D.C., the legislators, and especially the agency people who work here, they get to see the face of a rancher, someone who's raising cattle out in the country, and it kind of puts a face to the policy process and to the issues that we're worried about.
The Legislative Conference, sponsored by Elanco, gives cattlemen and women an opportunity to connect with members of Congress, as well as regulators at agencies such as the USDA and the EPA. And the lawmakers value this chance to hear firsthand how their decisions impact ranchers.
What you're doing this morning is really important. If you look at the way members of Congress make decisions, what are their inputs where they decide to do things? It's constituent input is at the top of everybody's list. And it works two ways. The best way to work is build relationships with your member of Congress before you need to go talk to them about something that you're asking them to do. But when you've got something to ask, there's not a better way to do it than look them straight in the eye and say, this is what's happening to us, this is what that does and doesn't do. You've got great representation, professional reputation here in D.C., and they work the processes all the time. But there's no one better at telling your story than you.
And as is always true in Washington, there is never a shortage of policy issues NCBA members and the cattle industry are facing.
You know, there's a whole gamut of issues that impact livestock producers, and so we look forward to visiting with our congressional delegation as well as agency heads on things like the Waters of the United States proposed rule, the Brazilian fresh beef proposed rule, as well as the federal dietary guidelines.
Certainly getting a good fix for the cool rule has been a big priority over the past few years. We've got some strategies going forward to hopefully be able to fix that. Also, the new announcement by the EPA expanding their jurisdictional authorities over all the waters in the United States and not just navigable waters as has been in the past. That could seriously affect cattle production in this country, could seriously affect the success of cattle producers and being able to manage their operations.
Well, one issue that I'm pretty concerned about is the Clean Water Act. As they try and take over and get more control of the water, now they're talking ditches and ponds and stuff, and it just seems like it never ends.
After 3 days of crisscrossing Capitol Hill and moving from meeting to meeting, does all this effort really make a difference? Those with experience say the answer is a resounding yes.
I know it takes a lot of work for producers to leave their families and their operations and spend a few days here in the nation's capital, but the rewards that it reaps are hand over hand and such a great benefit. And when I go back onto the Hill after our cattle producers have been in town for a few days, the stories that they share, the examples, the experiences, the regulations that they're having to deal with every day, it just really puts a real life personal touch on those conversations that we're having also in DC.
This is where you find out what are some of the rules and regulations that are going to impact your business and whether you're going to be able to be in business in the next 5-10 years. So I think you need to get engaged. This is a great avenue to find out how the process works that has long-lasting effects on your operation.
You know, there's so few folks involved in agriculture, and so it's important that we bind together and bring our voice to Washington, where so many of the decisions are made that impact our operations. It's powerful to join together with our fellow producers from across the country and help leverage our policy positions to congressmen and other decision makers so we can continue to have a profitable industry.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., I'm Sharon Alseth for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.